Hey there, welcome back to the Tango Banter. I am recording this episode freshly back from the Southern California Tango Championship, where I unexpectedly ended up placing third in the Jack and Jill category of the competition. And I guess I decided to record this episode for a number of reasons. One was just to give an insight into the world of competitive tango that I know a lot of people don't have access to and don't really know much about. I for sure didn't and still don't really. And I think these insights will be surprising to some of you. And the other reason was just to kind of give a bigger context to the role of championships in our communities, which I definitely had a transformation in my own view of that I want to share with you. Many of you know me as a social dancer, really committed to the goal of promoting tango as a social dance. And I've had a very critical opinion of the championship scene on the whole idea of tango being competitive. So my own history with tango championships, I think, reflects a lot of the experiences that other dancers have had with tango championships. So I hope this episode serves as a little bit of a window, an opening into this world that I would have never considered really getting involved in if it wasn't for the encouragement and prompting of certain people in my community. And I'm really glad that I was cajoled into it because I feel very altered by the experience. My own journey with the SoCal Tango Championship actually started a number of years ago because I got to attend a milonga on one of the nights a few years ago in 2019, right before COVID. And at that time, you know, I just walked into the milonga after all of the championship stuff was done. And the vibe in the milonga and the whole setup was just so glamorous compared to what I was used to. And I did have this feeling, this sense that I'm very much of an outsider. And there's this whole other world that exists, full of these competitors who have a lot of ego. And that was my observation of the milonga floor. It felt, I remember thinking that the dancers I was observing seemed very interested in themselves and their own dance, and they weren't necessarily treating tango in this more communal, social way that I felt I valued as a social dancer. So, you know, that was like my first feeling about the whole championship vibe. And I, from that point on, continued to think very critically of the idea of championships. And I remember pre-COVID, I even had this opinion that championships and competitive tango were somehow endangering tango as a whole, that the culture of championships was not the culture that I felt supported tango as I knew it, as I felt it should be, and that tango basically is going downhill because of that. And I know I'm not the only one who had that opinion and who still has that opinion. So I really wasn't supportive of this whole side of tango. But I know a lot of dancers who are actively participating in competitions. I've met many dancers along my path who are very active in that direction. So I trusted those dancers, and many of them were close friends, and I trusted their authenticity and their heart. So there was always this feeling in me that was kind of like unsettled. On the one hand, I disagreed with the idea of championships, but then I also knew a lot of great people who were doing championships who were also great dancers. So I got roped into participating at the SoCal Tango Championship last year. And I was going to attend that championship just as a social dancer. And at that time, I already had been doing the podcast for a while. And some of you remember that time period. You were already listening at that point. So I was intending to attend this festival. My friend was in town. We were going to go together. And I somehow got cajoled into participating in the Jack and Jill competition. So the way the championship is divided is there's multiple categories that people can compete in. And for the most part, all of them, except one, you are competing with a particular partner that you had been training with for this particular occasion. There's choreographies. There is a milonga competition where you just dance milonga. There's valse and a number of other categories. The Jack and Jill category is different because you don't have a partner, and the whole point is that it's completely random. So the way they do it is you come out with a partner onto the dance floor, and when you first start in the first round, there's maybe 12 couples on the floor at a time. I don't remember actually how many, maybe 10, maybe 12. And then there's like 3 groups. So there's quite a few people competing, and leaders and followers get judged separately. Once you get on the dance floor, they roll the dice and you have to switch right away. So even the person that you walk out with, you don't actually get to dance with them. So it's very random, and you dance 3 songs and you change. So you get judged for different skill sets, including, musicality, probably aesthetics, but also your ability to dance with different people. So it's a category that most closely resembles a social dance environment, because if you don't know how to adapt to different people when you dance, you can't do well in this category. So I decided to participate in this category last year. And at that time, I didn't even understand the whole process. Like, I remember last year I was very lost. I didn't know how the whole event ran and where I was supposed to be. And it was all very, very new. My one challenge to myself was to be able to go out on the floor and dance in such a way that was honest, that was me, and to see if I could do that and not get all nervous and, sort of get lost in the nervousness of it. Because I typically have terrible stage fright, and I was scarred as a child, really was not confident as a performer in any way. And so it was kind of a personal challenge for me to ask myself at this point as a dancer, can I go out there and just dance and just get lost in the music and not care that I'm being watched and not care that I'm being judged? And I remember I did that. I remember walking out and especially during the 3rd song, having this epiphany on the dance floor that I was doing it, that I felt very at ease. There was not that fear of losing my balance or messing up or making a mistake. I was really at ease. So that was a personal accomplishment. And I got eliminated in the first round. So the first round, they take 15 leaders and 15 followers, 15 Jacks and 15 Jills out of the group. And I came in number 16. And it was a really interesting moment because when they called the 15 Jacks and I realized that I didn't make it, I suddenly realized that I had this curiosity and a guilty desire to see myself among all these men in suits. And I was wearing this liquid gold shirt. So I thought, wow, if I had made it, I would just be this woman in gold among all these men. And there was something really romantic about that idea to me. And I thought, gosh, that sucks. Like that I didn't make it for that. Like I didn't even care about getting into the next level. I just was enamored by the image that I saw in my mind. And I thought, how symbolic would that be if that happened? Then I found out that I actually came in 16th. So I was so close. And I was somewhat disappointed, but a lot of me just didn't really care because that wasn't my intention anyway. I wasn't planning on it. And the rest of the event just kind of was a blur. And I didn't really think much of it, but I talked to a lot of people after the event who won and who didn't win and listened to how they talked about their experience. And I still had a very critical eye on the whole championship idea. But I have to say, listening to the people who went through the experience and how they talked about it, especially the people who ended up winning, there was something about their expression of what they experienced that was very provocative to me. I just saw how altered they were. And I didn't understand why. I couldn't pinpoint because as an outsider that I still felt, to me it was like, oh, it's just polishing their ego. This is just, people with ego getting together and figuring out whose ego is bigger. That's kind of the judgment I think I put on it. But I was struck by what I heard, both from the people who won and then the people who lost. A lot of them were really in turmoil about losing, and it really bothered them, and they theorized about why, and there were conspiracy theories about judges favoring certain dancers and how it's all politics, and some dancers were wondering why they got certain piece of feedback when some other teacher gave them a different piece of feedback, and here they are now having to figure out who's right and what they're actually not doing correctly. So that was where the experience left off last year. And I did not necessarily spend the year working towards the goal of doing very well at a tango championship. I never actually thought that I would compete again. I wasn't planning on it. I thought, okay, I did my part. I went through this experience. I got some intel. I got some good content for my podcast. Moving on. But some of the experience did have an impact on me. And one thing that did happen is that I started looking at my own dance more critically, because suddenly there was this feeling like somebody else looked at my dance and they judged it and they had an opinion on it. And if I disagreed with them, I wanted to know why and where I would disagree. And so I watched my performances that I did during the championship. I then committed myself to practicing more often and making videos of myself and watching my dance. And at some point through the grapevine, through indirect commentary and conversation, I sort of surmised that there might have been this idea of being too musical. And I actually talked about this. Is there such a thing as being too musical? And I asked that question of myself, of my dance. And when I would watch videos of myself, there were actually instances where I would see myself dance and go, that's too much. That's too much musicality. So it did prompt me to take my dance more critically and start to look at it from a different perspective. So that did happen. But beyond that, there was no plan for me to proceed with competing. And in fact, even competing at this opening level as a woman, I actually felt that I had a lot of wins in certain ways, because so many people came up to me afterwards and they've just said that they were so inspired by me doing this, and they were, rooting for me, and they felt that I should have won or proceeded to the next round. And it was really sweet to actually feel so much support. So when the time came for this year's championship, I at first wasn't going to go, and then my friends were going, and so you know how it is, like, that's how tango works. Peer pressure is how these things operate. So I knew my friends were going. It wasn't very far from LA. I was like, you know what, let's go. And I wasn't going to compete. I just was going to go as a social dancer. But then one day in the shower, which is where all the best ideas come, really, I thought to myself, last year when I competed, those videos that I got from that championship were actually really good for my social media. And I'm really focusing on, growing my social media. So I should, go and compete, get some good content, inspire some more people. Last year, that seemed to, really inspire people that I was competing as a leader. And I thought, why don't I go and just dance how I dance and be a representation of what I believe is a possibility of what tango can look like. And if I had any sort of judgment around tango that they promote in the championships as so sterile or so separate from the social dance floor or from what we value as social dancers, I thought, that's what I want to show. I'm gonna go and I'm really gonna dance the way I believe tango needs to be danced. I'm gonna really connect to the music. And I'm going to just focus on my follower and make them shine. I had one outfit that I put together, and I was really excited to find the perfect outfit. And I went with my one outfit, but at the very last minute, I was like, just in case, I'm just going to grab a couple of extra things. And the plan was to go and be there until Sunday and leave after Sunday afternoon and go home and watch the Oscars. That was my big plan for the afternoon, for the whole weekend. So once we got there and I competed in the first round, I felt like I achieved what I had gone for. Like, I did not need anything else. Everything worked out just right. And it was such a sweet experience in different ways. One of which was that the last song of that first round, I danced with a woman that I was paired up with last year at last year's Jack and Jill. I mean, the odds of that happening are insane. Of all the people, of all the leaders and followers who joined, it just so happened, of the three groups, right? There's three different groups of 12 couples each. Just keep thinking about it, Sylvia. So yeah, so we were paired up, and it was so sweet because we see each other. It was like a continuation from last year, and I did what I set out to do. I felt relaxed. I wasn't nervous necessarily. I was definitely, there was some shakes, but there wasn't like a huge amount of anxiety. But all the followers I danced with were pretty nervous. That's definitely, that first round, you could really feel everybody's dealing with those shakes. So I left, and I actually went back to my room and changed out of my carefully curated outfit, which I was proud of for putting together, but also learned is not the best outfit for performance. Silk shirts are not to be worn for performance because the amount of sweat that you end up having go through your shirt is just, it's not a good idea. So I changed and I was done. I kind of felt like, okay, now I just relax. I can dance. And what do you know? I got called to the next round, and it was surreal. And I felt really awkward at that moment because I realized I hadn't thought that far. I hadn't actually thought through what I would actually do if I went to the next round, and down to the specific things of like where to stand and how to like hold my hands and what to do next to the other men that are standing next to me. So the result of this, if you were on my social media, you've seen this picture. There's a line of gray and black suits, and then there is this little space, and then there's me wearing a leopard print top with my black pants, and I just look so awkward. I look like I'm, complete outsider, which I am. I felt that way. It was like, even though they told us to squeeze in for the picture, and I thought I did, I just hadn't squeezed in enough. From my perspective, it was enough. Anyway, it was a really funny moment, but I'm kind of in love with the picture too, because it really represented how it felt to suddenly actually get to this place that I imagined last year when I had that moment. Was like, oh my God, wouldn't it be cool? And so here's that moment. And I was laughing afterwards because I thought, gosh, I'm given that moment that I imagine, and what do? I go on the outside like, oh, I was beating myself up about it. But then I remember telling people, I was like, oh man, if I make it to the next round, I'm going dead center, which I did. And so I ended up making it to the finals as well, which meant that I did not get to see the Oscars live. And with each progressive experience, with each round, I felt like I was entering into some sort of alternate state, an alternate dimension, this sort of rarefied space, almost like you're flying into the stratosphere off the planet, this space of pure art and music. And the people that I ended up dancing with in the finals, I hadn't even considered that to be part of the experience, but it's sort of unique because first round, everybody was nervous. Second round, most people were nervous. By the third round, everybody who's left, I think, have processed so much adrenaline already. Like there's no more energy to be nervous. So everybody I danced with was just so calm and moved so beautifully. And it felt like this very unique and singular experience where you're dancing among all these other people who are these incredible, talented dancers in their own right. And the judges are watching you and the audience is watching you and filming you. And it's just, there's sort of an abstract kind of space. It's not real. It's like a total fabrication. But at the same time, there is a transcendent kind of experience there that's, I feel, is very artistic and very creative. I can imagine that athletes of really high level who compete on a very high level probably share this experience, especially if it's a team sport. That I've heard of athletes at pro level talk that when they are facing their opponents in their sport, that there's so much respect for those players that the experience of playing against them is really the thing that makes it worthwhile. And I felt that in the context of this ritual that is a tango competition. So I ended up placing third in the Jack and Jill as a Jack, which is an important marker for, I think, the tango community at large. It's an important marker for me for sure, because I started leading, years ago, not really intending even to lead socially. And it took a very long time for me to have the courage to step onto the social dance floor as a leader. And then from then on to continue to grow to this point where I somehow stumbled upon this recognition from my peers and from people who I have admired for a long time, that somehow my tango does conform or does live up to a particular standard which they uphold as a indicative of the tango tradition. Like, it's quite a marker for me, and it's a marker for women in general, because last year there were a number of women who competed alongside me as leaders, and they did not progress to the finals, or if they did, they didn't place. So this is the first time, I think, that I know of a woman placing. And I know I don't know the full tradition of championships, so it's something I want to actually now research. So I'm curious if there's other women who have been placing in different categories of competitions. But it definitely confirmed for me that as a woman, it is possible to win as a leader. And I think last year, because there were 3 women who competed as leaders, and none of them made it, there was a little bit of this question, like, is it because it's a woman? And I think now it feels like, okay, yeah, this is possible, that women can, win as leaders. And that's kind of amazing. It makes me excited to definitely do this again, because it was such a interesting experience in so many ways. And I got to say that even when I went through the experience last year and I did not have this positive outcome and I wasn't celebrating the same way, I look at my own growth as a dancer, and I consider the people that I talked to last year who did not progress and who were disappointed with their results, all of them have gotten a lot better. They've all really worked hard. And I have a handful of people in mind who've, since not progressing and not doing too well, they took the initiative, they went to classes, they studied, they traveled to Argentina, they pursued more training. And for myself, even though I didn't do that kind of rigorous work, it also served as a trigger, as a catalyst for change for me, even though I didn't really see it back then as sort of a tool for transformation, the way I see it now. And, before we went out for the final round, one of the judges came in. Actually, all of the judges came, and they gave us a pep talk, kind of like a locker room talk for, for the teams before they go out and play. And it was really cool. I really appreciated what they said. And I respected them so much for making that extra effort to speak to all of us. And they talked about that the tango competition is not about competing against other people, that it can be used as a tool for your personal growth. And all of the judges emphasized that it's not about the figures, it's about connection and enjoyment of the dance with your partners. And I remember them saying that, don't worry about doing more figures. If there's anything that's going to make a difference now, is for us to see that you're really enjoying yourself. And, at that point, I was like, I got this, because nobody is enjoying this more than me right now. I've already won in so many ways. Like, if I did not place, I was already a total winner in my mind. So I really felt like I could enjoy it more than everyone else. And that's what I did. It was such an important piece of wisdom. And I felt like there was this moment that I looked at all of them and I was like, wow, maybe they really do care. Because I think, again, there's this criticism that I had when I'm coming into a competition and I see judges who are sitting separate from everyone and they're sort of looking at everyone from above. And sometimes they're wearing sunglasses. Sometimes they look totally bored. And I wondered, are they here just because they're getting paid? Do they care about what they're looking at? Are they just like rolling their eyes secretly and wondering what they're even doing there? And that's still possible that might be going on, of course. But in that moment, I really felt that there was care and there was thoughtfulness. After the competition, we had the opportunity to get some feedback. Of course, it was very limited because there were so many people. But I did come up to one of the judges and asked for feedback. And she sat down and started flipping through pages and pages and pages of notes. And I realized she had notes for every single number, for every person. She put down a little comment. And the feedback that she gave to me was so subtle and it was so spot on. And it was like something I totally agreed with, because I actually noticed these like a certain thing that was happening with my closed side of the embrace when I was dancing. And she made a comment specifically about that. And I was like, wow, she's got such a good eye. Like they're really looking when they're watching. They're not just seeing if you fulfill a particular image in their mind. They're paying attention to your mechanics, to how you're adapting to your partner, to your musicality, which I think, if anything, if there was anything that really helped me to stand out, it was probably my musicality, because that's been my focus. But if someone were to ask me what I think got me this far this year versus last year, because my musicality has not necessarily changed in the way I feel the music. What's changed is the way I show my musicality. And that is, I just cleaned up my dance a little bit in terms of my movement. I've studied my movement and just sort of started to really look for more of a synergy, more of a grace to my frame versus being attached to showing a particular detail in the music, to favor more graceful transitions of my body rather than getting to that musical detail. I also got to attend classes during this championship. And again, this was the first time where I really committed to attending all of the classes that I signed up for. Last year, I attended maybe one class and it was really, really crowded, very loud. So I didn't really have a good time. But this time the classes were smaller and the space that we were in was much quieter. So it was a lot easier to relax and just kind of take in the information, I was pleasantly surprised by the fundamentalness of what the teachers were teaching. And it was such a relief because, again, with some of these really highly technical dancers, you go into their classes and a lot of times you're just getting these very complex sequences that are out of reach for most people. So I was really skeptical and wondering whether that was going to happen. And I was really excited to realize that they were just as committed to covering the fundamentals and explaining things in ways that really make sense to different levels of dancer, and showing things and giving a lot of time to practice something. It was, some of the best learning experience I've had in tango in a while. So another props to the organizer teachers for putting together that kind of curriculum, which, again, I don't know whether this is the case with all the championships. I'm curious if other championships have the same quality. But for me, this was kind of a surprising aspect of the championship. I want to round up my discussion by pointing out some other things that were kind of surprising to me that really helped me transform my view of the role of the championship in the tango community. One of the first things from the very first round that caught me off guard was some of the conversations that I had with people about participating in championships. And this continued throughout the whole event, where I would ask people, especially who competed a lot, I asked them why they did it. And all of them would talk about how they really enjoyed the camaraderie with the other dancers. And they appreciated going through something together, and that it was fun. It was something that they felt that they did together as a group, and it helped to bond them together as friends. So that was kind of surprising to me. And I did notice that the further I got in the competition, the more intimate I felt with the other dancers, the more I began to really care about whether other dancers were progressing or not. And I expected there to be a lot of this ego and people being kind of off-putting or not wanting to connect. And granted, there are a lot of dancers who are very, very serious. And when you come in, they're not there to chat. They're not there to be friendly. They don't look your way. They just have their eyes on the prize, you know? And some of these dancers are the ones who ended up winning first place. Like, they're the ones that are kind of in the corner, not talking to anyone. So it's understandable that for some people, it's really important for them not to break their focus. But I saw it in a different light. I didn't see it as them on purpose, trying to not interact with me because they feel like I'm not good enough, which is something that I think I felt a lot and other people feel. I took it more as they just need their space. And there were many, many other people who bonded with me and I bonded with, and we had moments, very special moments throughout the competition that, just are not possible in any other context. All of the people that I danced with in the final round, every one of them has a special place in my heart, because it was like we went through this thing together, and only we know what it's like. And it's just this unspoken kind of understanding that's always going to be there. And the songs that I danced with those people, I'm always going to remember those songs. Especially there was one song, a Biaggi song, that started and then the audio cut out. There's video of this, actually, which I love that they recorded this. We started dancing and then the song cut out, and I just continued to dance for a few beats, and people started singing the song on the sidelines. And it was just this little moment of, like, it was funny and stressful and nerve-wracking at the same time. And my partner was there with me. So it was kind of a cool thing to go through with another person, with another group of people that I just have never experienced before. So as I got closer to the dancers and I got more involved with the competition, I remember Alex and I sitting watching all of the competitors compete in the last final round, because the Jack and Jill category was first. So I competed first, and then we were able to just sit and watch everybody else. And as I sat there and watched, once again, this really surprised me. I frequently complained about performances, and I'm kind of vocal when it comes to performances happening during milongas, because I really want my dance time. But this was something different, because a lot of people who were there paid to be there, paid to watch it. And it was this very specific experience where it wasn't about the dancing. It was about watching people share what they've been working on, watching just pour out their heart onto the dance floor. And it was riveting in so many ways. And I kind of found myself getting really involved with the energy of the room and people around me and people filming and oohing and eyeing and clapping. And it was such a interesting little vibe, kind of a wave to ride with everybody. And I really enjoyed it, which in the past, it's not something I would have ever thought, to sit and watch dancers compete over and over to the, same type of setup, same people going out over and over. But there's something that was actually quite beautiful about the whole ritual. And it felt very much that we were both honoring the people who were performing, but that the people who were performing were sort of serving us, the audience. They were putting on their best ability, their best skills for, and it was kind of an interesting aspect of tango that I never really appreciated before. And when people won, like the amount of love and excitement and thrill that people felt when I won, how they applauded for everybody who won. There was just so much love in the room that I thought, gosh, I've never really experienced this kind of little bubble where there's so much energy and it's all concentrated in this little space. And I'm sure people coming in from the outside would totally feel like outsiders, right? It's not something you can just plug in for 5 seconds, look in and leave. We had been on a journey together. And by the third day, it felt like there was so much drama involved, and everybody was really excited to arrive at this point. And to that end, one other aspect of this championship that ended up being profoundly transformative for me was to see how much people cared and how quickly people rushed to help. At one point, I misplaced my cell phone, and it was amazing how many people came to the rescue from different parts of the hotel to help me. The hotel staff didn't. Granted, the hotel staff did not care, but all of the dancers, anybody that I mentioned that I had lost my phone, they immediately went into action to do something to help me. And I witnessed that with other people, other dancers needing help. Somebody spilled coffee on their dress and somebody else rushed in and got a hair dryer and they all got it all fixed. And it was kind of this frenzy, which when you watch like dance movies or any representation of competitive dance, you might sort of see competitiveness behind the stage and people kind of tripping each other up or something. But maybe that's what I expected, perhaps going into it. I was sort of wary that might happen, but it was kind of the opposite. Everybody really wanted to be helpful and really wanted everyone to have the best chance at succeeding, whatever you were doing, So to wrap up, this banter on my new take on the role of Tango Championships. I really have had a change of heart. I do think that now, having gone through this experience, I would say it's not the case that Tango Championships are going to somehow hinder tango from growing or dilute the heart of tango or somehow tarnish tango's purity and tradition. And in fact, one of the teachers in the class mentioned that the reason tango actually survived was because of stage tango. And that's true. In the 90s, when the famous Argentine tango performance that started touring in the 90s, when that came out, that was really the resurgence of tango. And now, instead of seeing Tango Championships as sort of this sinister side of tango, where it's a space for dancers with a lot of ego, instead, I think of it as the difference between professional sports and the sports that somebody might play down the street, like a soccer team, right? You have your professional soccer team, and then you have everybody around the world playing soccer. So just because you have this World Cup series where top players play with the most incredible prowess and talent and experience, and they get to show their prowess on the world stage, doesn't mean that it competes with the games and the soccer players who are playing in the backyard. It's still soccer. It's still that love of the game. It's just a different experience and a different context. I think what Tango Championships do is provide an outlet for people who want to take their dance to the next level. For me, I definitely feel like I've been looking for that as a social dancer, because I feel like I got to a certain level of social proficiency on the dance floor that is not challenging anymore. And I didn't even kind of have a sense that I needed a challenge. But when I went into this competition and I saw kind of the level at which some of these dancers operate and how they think about the dance and the care that they put into it, it was inspiring to me. It wasn't something that made me want to dance less. It made me want to do more and study more. So I think, if anything, Tango Championships actually promote a deeper study of tango, and they promote a culture of camaraderie long term, because I noticed that I shouldn't say most, because I don't know everybody who won last year, but I saw many of the dancers who won last year's championship attend as fans, as audience members, and cheer everybody on. And I imagine that I'm going to go back next year and do the same thing, and I will probably compete because I think I just need to see where this could lead, right? And I'm bummed, actually, that I did not get to stay for a Sunday night because we had to get back. But I do think that it's worthwhile if you decide to go next year, if you are thinking about competing, it's worthwhile to experience the whole thing and to see it from beginning to end. And of course, my experience is just one of the many experiences. There's many things to still be critical of. I'm sure there's many things to complain about, even with a successful event such as this. That's the nature of tango, the nature of social dance. I'd love to hear your take on it. If you attended SoCal Championship, or if you attended other types of tango competitions, I'd love to hear about your experience. You can, of course, reach me on social media at IMSO I'm So Tango. And let's continue this banter next week. Until then, ciao.